My name is Candace M. Griffin, and I am 32 years old. My sister called me a lucky idiot in front of the entire family at Thanksgiving dinner. She had no idea I was her actual boss. I just smiled, nodded, laughed along with everyone, and quietly removed her from payroll right there at the table. Her direct deposit didn't hit 3 days later. Turns out luck had nothing to do with it. Let me back up because this didn't start at Thanksgiving. This has been building for years, like a crack in a wall that everyone ignores, until the whole foundation starts shifting. Kelly is 28. We grew up in a standard middle-class suburb with parents who were accountants and treated hard work like religion. Education mattered. Responsibility mattered. On paper, it was a good upbringing. The problem was, my sister and I absorbed the same lessons in completely different ways. I was the kid who saved birthday money, mowed lawns, and bought my own bike upgrade. Kelly was the kid who spent her allowance the day she got it and then complained it wasn't enough. I read investing books in high school. She read celebrity gossip and called it networking because she saw people making money online and assumed it was magic. I'm not saying I'm perfect, I'm not. I just had different priorities. I wanted security. I wanted to build something stable. Kelly wanted to have fun and figure it out later. Neither approach is a crime, but they lead to very different outcomes, and Kelly has always hated that reality doesn't reward vibes the way it rewards effort. After college, I worked in renewable energy consulting. Boring title, interesting work. I helped companies transition to solar and wind, handled financial analysis, project management, the unglamorous side that actually makes things happen. The industry was growing fast, and I was good at what I did. Within 3 years, I was managing major accounts and making six figures. From the outside, it looked like a clean success story. From the inside, I could see the ceiling. I watched my boss buy a third vacation home while giving me a 3% raise that barely beat inflation. I was generating millions in revenue and seeing a fraction of the value. The math didn't work long term. So at 27, I did the thing my family called insane. I quit and started my own firm. When I handed in my notice, my boss laughed. Actually laughed. He told me I'd be back within a year, begging for my old job. He said the industry was too competitive and I didn't have the connections. His condescension became fuel. So did Kelly's. She told anyone who would listen that I was going to fail, that I'd crawl back to corporate life in 6 months, that she'd be applying to work for me someday just to watch me beg. The first year was brutal. 80-hour weeks, ramen dinners, 2 maxed-out credit cards. There were nights I sat at my laptop at 2 in the morning, staring at spreadsheets, wondering if everyone who doubted me was right. My parents were supportive but worried. My dad would make these careful comments about how there was no shame in going back to corporate work if things weren't panning out. He meant well, but it felt like he was already planning my failure. Kelly treated my struggle like entertainment. Then I landed a proposal. A mid-sized manufacturing company wanted to convert their facility to solar. It wasn't a massive contract, 80,000 total, but it kept me alive. More importantly, it brought referrals. Those referrals brought more. Suddenly, I had momentum. By year 2, I landed 3 major contracts. By year 3, I was hiring. By year 5, which is now, I'm running a firm with 23 employees, pulling in over $8 million annually in revenue, and personally clearing around $400,000 after expenses and salaries. I still drive a modest car. I still live in a nice but not flashy house. I don't wear designer clothes. I like blending in. The people who matter know what I built. Everyone else can assume whatever makes them comfortable. Kelly, meanwhile, has had 8 jobs in 6 years. Retail, restaurants, an insurance office, a gym, a marketing agency that fired her after 4 months, and a bunch of others I can't remember. There was always a reason she didn't stay. The job wasn't right. The boss was toxic. She deserved better. 2 years ago, she showed up at my house crying because she'd been fired for being late too many times. She needed rent money or she'd get evicted. She promised she'd pay me back. She promised it was a wake-up call. I gave her the money, knowing I'd never see it again, because she's my sister and I didn't want her homeless. I also told her I couldn't keep bailing her out. She nodded, thanked me, and bought a new phone the next week. Priorities. 6 months later, she called asking if I had job openings. She wanted something professional, with better pay and benefits, an office job where she could feel important. Every logical part of me said no. Don't mix family and business. Don't hire someone with her track record. But my mom had been hinting how nice it would be if I could help Kelly, and Kelly was acting like she finally wanted to change. So I created a position. Client Services Coordinator. Entry level. Emails, scheduling, database updates. $42,000 a year plus benefits. More than she'd ever made. I sat her down and laid out expectations clearly. Be on time. Respond to emails within 24 hours. Keep the client database clean. Be professional. Basic things. She promised she wouldn't let me down. For the first month, she was great. Early, enthusiastic, eager. I started thinking maybe I'd been wrong to doubt her. Then month 2 hit and the cracks showed. 5 minutes late became 30. Excuses replaced accountability. Her work quality slipped. Emails went unanswered. Meetings got scheduled wrong. My office manager, Patricia, came to me multiple times. Patricia has been with me since year 1. She doesn't complain unless it's real. The worst incident happened when Kelly scheduled a critical presentation with a potential client for 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. The client flew in from Nevada specifically for that meeting. At 1:45, I got a call from the front desk saying the conference room wasn't set up and Kelly wasn't in the office. Turns out she went to lunch at noon and never came back. She ran into friends and decided to hang out. She showed up at 4 p.m. like nothing happened. I had to apologize and comp part of our fees to save the relationship. That mistake cost me about $15,000 and almost destroyed trust with a client who could have brought us years of work. When I confronted her, she said she lost track of time and didn't think it was a big deal since I could handle it anyway. That was the pattern. She treated my effort like a safety net she was entitled to. I gave her a formal written warning, documented everything, told her she had 30 days to improve. She cried, promised she would, improve for 2 weeks, then slid right back. The final straw came about 3 months ago when she ignored emails from a major client, an expansion project worth around $2 million. She forgot. I spent hours smoothing it over and barely saved the contract. I should have fired her right then, but Thanksgiving was coming and my mom was so proud we were working together. I decided I'd wait until after the holiday, fire her professionally, give her severance, be generous. Then Thanksgiving happened. We were all at my parents' house, turkey and stuffing and too much pie, everyone sleepy and full. Someone asked how work was going. I gave a polite answer. Strong year. Grateful for the team. Nothing flashy. That's when Kelly leaned back with a smirk and said, "Yeah, well, she got lucky. That's all it is." The table got quiet. My dad frowned. My mom's face tightened. Kelly's boyfriend, Jake, nodded along like she was delivering gospel. Kelly kept going, enjoying the attention. She said I wasn't even that smart, that I rode a wave, that anyone could do what I do, that a trained monkey could undercut competitors on price and call it strategy. She looked right at me, daring me to react. I smiled. I nodded. "You might be right," I said calmly. "Luck definitely played a role." Kelly looked almost disappointed I wasn't fighting. "Exactly," she said, vindicated. "People need to stop acting like she's special. Luck runs out eventually." Everyone rushed to the living room for pie to escape the awkwardness. I pulled out my phone like I was checking messages. I opened our HR app. I navigated to Kelly's profile. Employment status, active. I changed it to terminated. Effective date, today. Reason, performance issues and violation of company conduct policy. Confirm. No severance, just final pay. 90 seconds. By the time I sat down with my pumpkin pie, Kelly was no longer employed by my company. Her system access was revoked. Her direct deposit scheduled for next Friday was canceled. She kept talking in the living room about how overrated I was, criticizing my house, implying I was lying about my income or too stupid to spend money properly. I just ate my pie and nodded. She'd find out soon enough what luck really looked like. I slept better that night than I had in months. Not because I enjoyed humiliating my sister, but because the decision I'd been dragging behind me like a weight was finally off my shoulders. I'd spent half a year trying to balance family loyalty with basic business reality, and the truth was simple. If Kelly weren't my sister, she would have been fired by month 2. The only reason she lasted this long was because I kept hoping she'd become the person she kept promising she was about to be. Friday morning, I got to the office early. Patricia was already there, as always. She's the kind of office manager who makes chaos look like order. The kind of person who held my company together in the early years when it was just me, a laptop, and panic. I called her into my office and told her Kelly was no longer with the company. Patricia's face showed relief first, then concern, like she didn't want to celebrate too openly. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said. "It's overdue." Patricia nodded once. "I'll handle the redistribution. And for what it's worth, you made the right call. She wasn't a good fit here." That stung more than I expected, not because Patricia was wrong, but because it confirmed what my team had been swallowing for months while I let family sentiment cloud my judgment. We sent a brief email to the staff. Professional, clean, no drama. Kelly Turner was no longer with the company effective immediately. Her responsibilities had been reassigned. All client coordination should route through Patricia until further notice. Nobody asked questions. Nobody needed to. They'd watch the late arrivals, the missed emails, the careless attitude. A few people even stopped by my office throughout the day with quiet thank you looks, like my leadership had finally aligned with reality. The payday her direct deposit was supposed to hit was the following Friday. Around 2 in the afternoon, while I was in a client meeting, my phone started buzzing like a trapped insect. Text from Kelly. "Hey, my paycheck didn't deposit. Can you check with payroll?" I didn't respond. I stayed in the meeting. 10 minutes later, another message. "Seriously, where's my paycheck? This is ridiculous." Then another. "I need that money today. I have bills. Fix this now." She called. I declined. She called again. Declined. Then my office line rang and Patricia answered. I watched her expression shift from neutral to trying not to smile. Patricia walked into my office and said, "Kelly's on the line." "Tell her to check her email," I said. "She should have the termination notice." Patricia went back to her desk. Through the glass wall, I could see her speaking calmly, then pausing, then speaking again. A few seconds later, Kelly's voice got loud enough that I could hear fragments through Patricia's receiver. Patricia repeated herself, ended the call, and came back in. "She says she never got an email," Patricia reported, "and she's demanding to speak to you." "Verify it was sent," I said. Patricia checked. Sent Friday at 8 a.m. to her company email. She shook her head slightly. She probably hasn't checked her work email since Thanksgiving. Of course she hadn't. Kelly treated checking email like it was optional, which was one of the reasons she was terrible at the job she claimed was so stressful. Patricia blocked Kelly's number after the third call because Kelly wasn't asking for information. She was trying to bully someone into reversing reality. Then Kelly switched to texting me personally, the messages escalating in speed and rage like she was unraveling in real time. "You fired me." "You can't do that. That's illegal. Mom is going to hear about this. Dad, too. You're going to regret it. I can't believe you do this to your own sister." I replied once, and only once, because that's all the situation deserved. "You received your final paycheck for all hours worked up to your termination date on November 25th. Any questions should be directed to HR. Then I muted the thread. Kelly didn't stop. She called my personal phone. I didn't answer. She tried my office again from a different number. Patricia blocked it. Then she did the thing I should have anticipated the moment I hired her. She showed up. It was Monday morning. Security called me from the lobby asking if I was expecting Kelly Turner. I said no. I said she was no longer employed and should be asked to leave. Kelly argued with them, loud enough that other tenants glanced over. She tried to force herself past the desk. Security escorted her out. There's something satisfying about watching consequences arrive in a building where you need a key card to pretend you belong. That night, my mom called, not to ask how I was, not to ask what happened, straight to accusation. "What's this about you firing Kelly?" "It's true," I said. "I terminated her employment." "She said you did it without warning," Mom snapped. "That you did it out of spite because she said you got lucky at Thanksgiving." "Mom, I documented 6 months of performance issues," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Late arrivals, missed deadlines, unanswered client emails. She cost me money and nearly lost a major account." "But she's your sister." "And she was my employee," I said. "A bad employee. I gave her more chances than anyone else would have because she's family. I can't run a business on sentiment." My mom tried the guilt route. the soft voice that makes you feel like the villain for having boundaries. She's struggling. She's behind on rent. She needs help. She needed to think about that before she treated her job like a hobby, I said. I helped her by giving her a real position with good pay and benefits. She threw it away. My dad called the next day. He was blunt. You need to give Kelly her job back. No, I said. She made one comment at dinner and you ruined her life over it. I felt something cold and precise settle in my chest. Ask her about the $2 million client she ignored, I said. Ask her how many emails she left unanswered. Ask her why she disappeared for hours after scheduling a meeting a client flew in for. There was a long pause. She didn't mention any of that, Dad said finally, slower now. Of course she didn't, I replied. Responsibility doesn't fit her narrative. Dad sighed like he didn't want to admit I was right, but he couldn't deny the shape of the facts. Your mother is very upset. I'm sorry she's upset, I said, but I made the right decision. When I hung up, I realized something that made my stomach twist in a different way than anger. Kelly wasn't just furious. She was embarrassed. And Kelly has never handled embarrassment without trying to burn the person who caused it. That was when I knew the paycheck that didn't land wasn't the end of this story. It was the spark. I was right. The paycheck wasn't the end. It was just the moment Kelly realized she'd lost control of the narrative, and Kelly has always believed that as long as she controlled the story, reality would eventually bend to her version of it. When it didn't, she went looking for another way in. It started quietly, the way these things usually do. A few days after she was escorted out of the building, I noticed a shift in the tone of messages coming in from people I barely spoke to anymore. A former classmate asking if everything was okay. A distant cousin checking in with a strangely sympathetic tone. Even an old coworker sending a vague, "hope you're holding up" text. That's when I knew Kelly was talking. She was painting herself as the victim, the betrayed little sister fired in a moment of petty revenge by a power-hungry older sibling who couldn't handle criticism. I ignored it. I had work to do, real work. The company was growing, and I didn't have time to babysit a meltdown. But Kelly wasn't done. She never is. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I got a Google alert for my company name. I clicked it out of habit, expecting a mention in some trade article or a referral link. Instead, there it was, a brand new 1-star review. The headline alone made my stomach drop. Scam company, avoid at all costs. I opened it and read through the whole thing twice, slowly, like reading a crime scene. The reviewer claimed my company had taken $50,000 from his business and delivered nothing, said we were frauds hiding behind buzzwords and fake expertise. He even named a fake business, something generic enough to sound real, but just vague enough to be untraceable. The account that posted it had been created that same day and had no other activity. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't clever, it was desperate. I screenshotted everything, pulled the IP activity report, and checked the account metadata. Then I smiled, because Kelly had underestimated me in the same way she always did. I have alerts on everything tied to my business. I have records. I have attorneys on retainer. I forwarded the screenshots to my lawyer with a short message. This is fake. Looks like retaliation. He called me within the hour. Do you know who posted it? I have a strong suspicion, I said. Turns out Kelly's boyfriend, Jake, thought he was smarter than the system. He'd created the review under a fake account, thinking anonymity would protect him. Google removed it within 48 hours after we submitted documentation proving the claim was false. Then my attorney sent Jake a cease and desist letter for defamation and attempted damage to business reputation. The letter wasn't dramatic. It was precise, outlining potential civil liability if the behavior continued. Kelly called me 2 days later, screaming so loudly that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She accused me of threatening her boyfriend, of trying to ruin her life, of being vindictive and cruel. I told her calmly that if her boyfriend wanted to commit defamation, he should be prepared for consequences. Then I hung up. Jake backed off immediately. No more fake reviews. No more anonymous attacks. It turns out bravado collapses pretty fast when legal consequences enter the room. By February, Kelly's life was visibly unraveling. She'd fallen behind on rent. Her landlord filed for eviction. Jake stopped answering her calls once he realized she was a liability, not a partner. She moved back into my parents' house at 28, dragging boxes into the same bedroom she'd stormed out of years earlier, claiming she was destined for more. My mom called me, exhausted, and told me Kelly was asking if I'd reconsider hiring her back or at least loan her money for a deposit somewhere. I said no, not angrily, not dramatically, just no. She's really struggling, my mom said, like that was supposed to change something. I understand, I replied, but she's struggling because she refuses to take responsibility. I can't fix that for her. That conversation marked a shift. My parents stopped defending her the way they always had. They didn't suddenly admit they were wrong, but the constant pressure eased. They were tired. They were starting to see the pattern they'd spent years ignoring. Meanwhile, my business was doing better than it ever had. The client Kelly almost lost, the $2 million one, came back with an expansion proposal. They wanted us to handle 12 more properties, a $5 million contract over 3 years. During the signing meeting, their VP specifically praised our improved communication and responsiveness. He said it was night and day compared to their initial experience. I thanked him and explained we'd made some internal changes to better serve our clients. He nodded approvingly. That moment mattered more than any argument with Kelly ever could. It wasn't revenge, it was validation. Proof that removing the problem made everything else work better. Kelly heard about the expansion through my mom. She didn't say anything directly to me, but I could picture it. The realization that her lucky idiot sibling wasn't flailing without her. The realization that the success she dismissed so casually kept growing without her anywhere near it. I didn't feel smug. I felt sad. Not for her situation, but for the version of her that could have existed if she'd ever stopped blaming everyone else. And that's when I learned another lesson I should have known earlier. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be accountable. All you can do is step out of their way and let reality handle the rest. By spring, the dust had settled into something that looked like normal. Not the old normal where I was constantly bracing for the next family emergency or cleaning up Kelly's messes, but a quieter, steadier version where my days were defined by work that mattered and boundaries that held. The company crossed 30 employees. We moved into a larger office. I finally replaced my old car with a newer one, still practical, still understated, but no longer held together by optimism and duct tape. My parents and I reached an uneasy truce. We talked about neutral things, weather, work, a recipe my mom tried. They stopped asking me to help Kelly. I think they finally understood that no amount of money or opportunity would fix her if she refused to do the work. My dad apologized once, quietly, on a Sunday afternoon call. He said he understood why I'd made the decision I made. That meant more than I expected. Kelly, on the other hand, kept cycling. Department store job. Fired for being late. Call center job. Quit after a month because it was toxic. She blamed the world. She blamed me. She blamed luck, timing, circumstance, anything but herself. I didn't engage. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself anymore. Silence, I learned, is often the clearest answer. Then September arrived with something I hadn't anticipated. We won an industry award, Innovative Renewable Energy Consulting Firm of the Year. There was a ceremony, a small stage, a glass trophy, and a write-up in 3 trade publications the following morning. My team was ecstatic. Patricia cried. I gave a short speech about collaboration, about standards, about building something that lasts. I didn't mention family. I didn't mention luck. The article went live on a Friday. By that afternoon, my phone was buzzing with congratulations. Former colleagues, old clients, even people who had once quietly doubted me. My mom called that evening. She sounded proud, careful, like she didn't want to say the wrong thing. She told me Kelly had seen the article too. She didn't say anything, Mom added, but I could see it on her face. I didn't respond to that. There wasn't anything to add. Understanding, if it came at all, had to come without my involvement. A few weeks later, I got a LinkedIn message from someone who'd worked with Kelly before she joined my company. He said she'd been telling people she quit on principle because she refused to participate in unethical business practices. I posted a neutral update about our expansion and our commitment to professional standards. I didn't name her. I didn't need to. 2 people reached out privately to say they'd heard the rumors and were glad to see the truth reflected in our growth. Her narrative collapsed under the weight of evidence she couldn't manipulate. The last time Kelly contacted me was a short text. I got a new job, starts Monday. I replied once, glad to hear it, good luck. She never responded. I think that was her version of closure. Looking back, the most surprising part wasn't that I fired my sister or that the business thrived afterward. It was how quickly peace followed once I stopped negotiating with dysfunction. I didn't win because I embarrassed her at Thanksgiving or because her direct deposit didn't land. I won because I finally treated myself with the same respect I demanded from my team. Some people call that cold. I call it necessary. I didn't expect to hear from Kelly again. Not directly. By then, months had passed without so much as a text, and I'd settled into the quiet certainty that our relationship had entered a long, necessary pause. But life has a way of testing boundaries right when you start to trust them. The call came on a Sunday afternoon. I was at home, sorting through paperwork, doing the kind of boring maintenance tasks that come with running a growing company. When I saw her name on my phone, I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before answering. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail. Another part of me knew that whatever she had to say, this might be the last time I'd hear it. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Not angry, not sarcastic, tired. I just wanted to talk, she said. I didn't rush to reassure her. Okay, I replied. There was a long pause on her end, the kind where you can hear someone deciding which version of the truth to present. I know things didn't end well, she finally said. I've had a lot of time to think. I almost laughed at that, but I didn't. About what? I asked. About everything, she said quickly. About work, about Thanksgiving, about how I handled things. She hesitated. I don't think you understand how hard it's been for me. There it was, the pivot, the familiar setup. I let her finish. I feel like I've always been in your shadow, she continued. Everyone compares me to you. You were always the smart one, the driven one. I never felt like I could measure up. I closed my eyes for a moment, not because her words hurt, but because I recognized the pattern. This wasn't accountability, it was reframing. Kelly, I said calmly, being compared to me didn't make you late for work. It didn't make you ignore clients. It didn't make you insult me publicly or try to damage my business. She bristled. I could hear it in her breathing. You don't have to throw everything in my face. I'm not throwing anything, I said. I'm stating facts. She went quiet again. When she spoke, her voice wobbled just enough to sound vulnerable. I just wish you'd given me more time, more understanding. I took a breath. I gave you 6 months, Kelly. 6 months of warnings, conversations, second chances, more than I gave anyone else. She sighed sharply. So that's it then. You're done with me. That was the moment everything crystallized. I'm not done with you, I said. I'm done fixing things you refuse to take responsibility for. She didn't respond right away. Then she said something that told me exactly where she still was. If you really cared about family, you'd help me get back on my feet. I felt no anger, just clarity. If I really cared about you, I replied, I'd stop rescuing you and let you grow. She scoffed softly. Easy for you to say. Yes, I said, because I did it. The silence stretched. I could almost picture her processing that, trying to twist it into something unfair, but unable to find the angle. Finally, she said, I guess I just wanted you to say you were sorry. For what? I asked. For humiliating me. I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. I didn't humiliate you. You humiliated yourself by refusing to do the job you were paid to do and then insulting me when you thought I couldn't respond. That was the end of the conversation. Not with a bang, not with tears or shouting, but with something far more final. She murmured something about needing to go and hung up. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for her job back. She didn't apologize either. And that told me everything I needed to know. I set my phone down and went back to my paperwork. The world didn't end. Nothing dramatic happened. But something shifted inside me. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for her to change. I wasn't hoping for an apology that might never come. I wasn't carrying the weight of responsibility for her choices. That call wasn't closure in the movie sense. It was closure in the adult sense. The kind where you realize you've outgrown the version of the relationship that kept you stuck. I didn't block her. I didn't need to. Boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about knowing where you end and someone else begins. And I finally knew exactly where that line was. The funny thing about endings is that they rarely announce themselves. There's no final argument, no dramatic exit, no satisfying confession. Sometimes the end is just a quiet understanding that nothing more needs to be said. That was how it ended with Kelly. After that call, weeks passed without contact, then months. Her name stopped coming up in conversations. My parents stopped giving me updates, not because I asked them to, but because there was nothing new to report. Kelly was working, struggling, moving forward in fits and starts, living with the consequences she'd spent most of her adult life avoiding. My life kept expanding in the opposite direction. The company closed the year at just over 16 million in revenue. We hired a third project manager. I promoted Patricia to director of operations and gave her equity, something she'd earned a dozen times over. We opened a second office in a neighboring city. For the first time, I took an actual vacation, not a working trip, not a conference disguised as a break. A real week away where my phone stayed off and the business ran just fine without me. That mattered more than the money. At one point during that vacation, sitting on a quiet balcony with coffee in my hand, I thought about Thanksgiving again, about the moment Kelly called me a lucky idiot and waited for me to flinch. I realized something then that I hadn't fully understood before. She wasn't attacking my success. She was defending her own failure. If my achievements were just luck, then her lack of progress wasn't her fault. It was the universe's. But the universe doesn't clock in late. It doesn't ignore emails. It doesn't blame other people for missed deadlines. People do that. I never told my family how much that moment at the table changed things for me, how it clarified something I'd been trying not to see. That love without respect isn't generosity, it's self-betrayal, and that enabling someone doesn't make you kind, it makes you complicit. Kelly and I crossed paths once more, unexpectedly, about a year later. I was leaving a coffee shop near my office when I saw her through the window, sitting alone, staring at her phone. She looked up and our eyes met. For a split second, I saw a dozen emotions flicker across her face. Surprise, defensiveness, something like regret. She gave me a small nod. I nodded back. That was it. No confrontation, no reconciliation. Just two people acknowledging that the story between them had already been written. I didn't feel triumphant walking away. I felt settled. My parents have come a long way too. They still love Kelly. They probably always will. But they've stopped asking me to sacrifice myself for her comfort. They've learned, slowly and painfully, that treating their daughters differently didn't protect either of us. It just delayed the lesson for one and accelerated it for the other. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that consequences don't need an audience. They don't need speeches or public humiliation or perfectly timed payback. They just need consistency. They need boundaries that don't move. They need silence where there used to be excuses. Kelly used to believe I was successful because I got lucky. Maybe luck helped at some point. But luck didn't keep me up at night writing proposals. Luck didn't rebuild client trust. Luck didn't fire my own sister when it was necessary. That was discipline. That was choice. That was work. I don't hate her. I don't wish her harm. I just refuse to carry her anymore. And that, I've learned, is not cruelty. It's growth.